Okay, guys, I'm Zach. This lecture will be on mental health in America. It's a topic that I'm really interested in. When I was in university, I studied psychology and Russian. Had more success with psychology. And in the future, I plan on going to medical school and being a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist? Psychiater? Yeah. So all this stuff is really interesting to me. There's a lot that we can talk about. There is no hope of talking about all of it today. So, if there's anything that I don't mention, that you're curious about, you want to know more about, just raise your hand, just yell at me, tell me to stop, ask me a question. I'm happy to let you do that. So, yeah, let's get started. So, what are we talking about? Some form of mental illness. This can be serious, or it can be not so serious. The thing with mental health and mental health problems is that it's not I have a problem or I don't have a problem. It's not like the flu, right? You either have the flu or you don't have the flu. With mental health problems, it's kind of a range, right? I can have this problem very, very bad or not so bad, right? Anywhere in between. So, 1 in 4 Americans suffer from some kind of mental illness. This could be serious or not serious. So how many people are in this room? Probably about 30, which means that probably at least 3 of you guys, or us, have a little bit of something, right? Statistics.
Every second.
Exactly. But we want to talk about the serious stuff. We want to talk about the really serious stuff. And about 1 in 17 have serious illnesses. So, it's less of us, maybe 2 people in here, right? But what do I mean by serious illnesses? Major depression, you guys all know what depression is, I assume, yes?
Yep.
Excellent, excellent. Bipolar disorder, what is that? Does anybody know what bipolar disorder is? No. That's something much more serious. Bipolar. If we look at the word, bi means 2, and polar is 2 sides, right? Mm-hmm. So these are people that switch between being manic and lots of energy and talking, and you can't stop them, and then another day they might just be really depressed and really sad and quiet. So there's a couple of different ways that someone with bipolar disorder can show that they have bipolar disorder. But that's the general idea, is that you switch between lots of energy and then depression. And schizophrenia is next. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. I did research in schizophrenia at my university. We're going to leave that to be a topic a little bit later in the lecture. Anxiety disorders as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Eating disorders. What is an eating disorder? What can you imagine? What's an eating disorder?
When you're constantly you're constantly hungry.
That's one. That's one form. It's when you can't stop eating. Or eat less than you need. That's another possibility, right?
You just refuse meals.
What's that?
Refuse eating.
Yeah, exactly. There's about 3 or 4 different types of eating disorders, but that's anything you can imagine being a problem with eating. There's a particular disorder for it.
And there is such a term as bulimia.
Bulimia, right? Bulimia, anorexia, all kinds of different things. Hi guys, have a seat. Nice to see you. Personality disorders, we'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. ADHD. This has become a very popular illness for children. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. This is, you can imagine a kid, right? A small kid just never wants to sit still, and he's always running around, and he's got so much energy, and he doesn't really listen to his parents, right? Well, when that's not normal, that's when we have ADHD. My question for you, though, is when do you decide? Is that normal or is that not normal? And as we can talk about throughout the course of this lecture, that's one of the biggest problems with mental health in America in the first place, is trying to decide what is normal and what is not normal. The general guideline is that something is not normal if it hurts you in your daily life, if it forces you to have bad relationships, if it hurts your chances at work, these kinds of things. That's when it's a problem, okay? Or in the case of ADHD, students in school, right? If they're getting very bad grades, that is when you might want to see a doctor about this kind of problem. And then autism, everybody knows autism, yes?
Dustin Hoffman in the film Rain Man.
Exactly. An excellent example. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about some of these in particular. So first, anxiety disorder. What is anxiety? Oh,
Oh, sorry.
that's okay. No worries, no worries.
I thought it was unsounded.
Totally fine, totally fine. So what's anxiety?
When you're anxious.
Exactly. Worry, anxious, right? There's a lot of different kinds. There's panic disorder. This is when you just get so upset about a situation that you can't even really breathe. It's very serious. Some people have to go to the hospital, a regular hospital, because they think they might even be having a heart attack. That's how serious this panic disorder can be. Obsessive compulsive disorder. Has anybody heard of this one? This one's really interesting. This is people that constantly wash their hands. They're very afraid of germs. They want everything to be organized. If, for example, if this desk were the desk of an OCD person, and I move something, no, they'll get very upset, very angry. They like everything to be organized and in its place. They like to be clean.
Zach, have you watched The Scrubs?
Of course.
There was a Martin J. Fox. He was just like this.
Exactly that. Yes. Michael J. Fox has OCD very bad in Scrubs. And if anybody hasn't watched Scrubs, totally watch it. It's great. Great show. PTSD. This is post-traumatic stress disorder. So what might be a situation when somebody would get PTSD? Can you guess?
Some disaster.
Right. Wars, disasters, some kind of violent crime maybe. Like if you're a victim of an attempted murder, you might even have PTSD. Lots and lots and lots of soldiers come home from any war with some serious form of this problem. It's an interesting one because now they try to treat PTSD with, of all things, video games. It turns out that that wonderful game Tetris. Has anybody played Tetris? Yeah! Tetris is actually a very effective way to treat people with PTSD. It relaxes them. It makes things orderly.
And with the help of animals, for example horses.
Yes, animals are a classic example of how to treat someone with these kinds of problems. And phobias, you guys all know. Phobia, whatever you can imagine being afraid of, there is a phobia for it. For example, I'm afraid of spiders, as all of my students know. I have arachnophobia. Yeah. So, and there's others. Another kind of anxiety disorder would be one where you can't stand up in front of a group of people and talk to them, right? It's a social anxiety. These people have no ability to stand in front of people and talk to them. They get really upset, they get really nervous. So all of these anxiety disorders, one way we can treat them, especially like these social anxiety problems, is called aversion therapy. You've got a problem with something, we slowly start putting you into those situations. So if you're afraid to talk in front of people, maybe the doctor will say, talk in front of your family for 5 minutes. And then slowly get bigger and bigger. So maybe after you've practiced talking to your family, maybe talk to a group of 10 people, friends, and work up and work up. And eventually this helps break down the anxiety. Personality disorders. These are honestly some of my favorite. These are very, very interesting. These are not as serious as most of these other mental illnesses we talk about. These personality disorders are only small differences in the way you behave. And there's 9 total types of personality disorders. We're not going to go into all of them. But they have three main groups: strange and odd behavior. These are people that act like they have schizophrenia, but they're not so bad. These are also people that don't talk to anyone. That's another kind of odd behavior, right? I mean, you want to talk to somebody, you expect them to talk back to you. Dramatic, these people, as you can imagine, try to create drama in everything they do. Yeah. Well, one of my professors in school said that maybe all women have this. I disagree, but he was joking. And then anxious. We talked about anxious. This is the not so serious. Right? Why do I have Seinfeld? Does anybody watch Seinfeld? It is a TV show from about 10 years ago in America. Very popular TV show. It's a comedy. And it was really successful. One of the reasons it was so successful is all four of these main characters, the character has some type of personality disorder. For example, this guy has obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. He's got to have everything clean and neat, and he's constantly washing his hands. She is a bit dramatic. We would call that histrionic. He is narcissistic. What is narcissism? Anybody know?
Narcissism.
Yeah, really loves himself. Right. And he has schizotypal. He is a little bit like someone with schizophrenia, and he's always got these crazy ideas, and he's trying to... he's constantly got some strange plan. Personality disorders are very interesting to see, but you know, they can really take a toll on your life if you've got one of these problems. I mean, you can imagine that, for example, if you're creating drama all the time, it's probably hard to keep friends, right? If you are constantly, like this guy, narcissistic, and you care about yourself, probably also hard to keep friends, right? What to do? We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, my favorite, schizophrenia. Does anybody know anything about schizophrenia? Yeah? A little bit? A little? Schizophrenia, right? Okay. And now everyone's like, oh yeah. Now I know what you're talking about. So, what are the symptoms of schizophrenia? The two main symptoms are delusions and hallucinations. What are hallucinations? Right.
They're in your mind.
Yeah. There's two kinds of hallucinations. Visual, which is not very common. When you see something that's not there. And then auditory. It's when you hear something that's not there. Most often, voices. People telling you to do this or to do that, or just laughing at you, or criticizing you. It can be very, very frustrating to deal with. Very frustrating to deal with for the person that has schizophrenia. Delusions, though. Delusions are when you have an incorrect belief. So, hallucinations are when you see or you hear something that's not real. But delusions are when you believe something that's not real. And that can be a lot worse, actually. These kinds of people might have a belief that the government is trying to get them. They might have a belief that there's a radio in their brain and they're trying to send messages to people.
Or aliens.
Or aliens.
Everywhere.
So it's kind of ideas of how drunk people.
I don't want to say yes, but I don't want to say no. Some people think that animals are trying to talk to them, or that there are patterns in everything around them, right? So those are the two biggest things. But there's some other symptoms too. Disorganized speech. Very often, it's extremely hard to understand and to have a conversation with someone who has schizophrenia. It's extremely hard because they'll start talking and then they'll change the subject and start talking about, I don't know, like pink birds or something. If you ever meet someone with schizophrenia, you'll know immediately because it's impossible to miss. And it's a big challenge for doctors because when you want to treat somebody, you want to talk to them. You want to help them out, right? But if you can't keep them on the same topic, if they keep changing the conversation, that makes it really, really hard. Strange behavior, this could be all kinds of things. Whatever you can imagine as strange, that you could see someone with schizophrenia doing it. There's a type of schizophrenia called catatonic schizophrenia. These people, this is very strange behavior, they will sit in really uncomfortable positions for hours. Hours. Not moving even a muscle. All kinds of other strange behavior too. Negative symptoms. This is the hardest to deal with as a doctor because all of these are positive symptoms. There's something added on to what you normally do. Negative symptoms are something missing from what you normally do. For example, if you never are happy to do anything, you're always just, there's no fun in life. That's called anhedonia. That is a negative symptom. Not speaking at all, also a negative symptom. There's all kinds of things where flat affect, no emotions, none. No happiness, no sadness, nothing. Those are really hard to treat. The medicine we have now, we have all kinds of medicine. And they do a great job with delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech. But no medicine we have can do anything for negative symptoms. How do you add something that should be there? There's a lot of famous people that have had schizophrenia, and for me at least, artists are the most interesting to look at. I got a couple of artists here. This is Lewis Wayne. You can see when he was alive. He liked cats. He really liked cats. He loves drawing cats. And you can see, these are pretty nice cats, right? Maybe the eyes are a little bit big, but nice cats.
Like a puss.
Right.
The cartoon Shrek.
Exactly. Exactly that. But look at these cats. A little bit stranger, wouldn't you think? So the first two, he painted before his schizophrenia was very bad, when he was more or less still normal. And as you can see, this is already as his illness is getting worse. And then there's these. Whether or not you think so, these are cats. At least according to Lewis Wayne. Does anybody actually see anything like a cat in there?
Yeah.
I see some eyes there, right? Maybe a
If you are
mouth.
prompted, yeah.
Maybe some ears. Maybe.
Maybe paws.
Maybe. And here, I can't find anything.
You like flowers?
Yeah, it looks just like a flower, right? So this is one example. I've got another great example. This guy is Brian Charnley. Very, very, very sad story with this guy. He loved to paint, an excellent painter. He did a lot of self-portraits like we have here. Got some normal ones, right? And then when was really suffering from his schizophrenia, he's got some more strange ones. I mean, with the mouth coming out of his head. I tell you, if you Google his name, Brian Charnley, you can find tons and tons of strange pictures that he has drawn. I say it's a sad story because, like a lot of people that are suffering from this kind of illness and don't get help from a doctor, he didn't really know how to help himself, and eventually his depression and all of his problems and his delusions led him to kill himself. And suicide, not just for schizophrenia, but for all mental illness, is a very big problem. Suicide is a giant reason why a lot of people end up dead from all kinds of illnesses. It's, most of these illnesses you wouldn't think they would kill you. But it's because the thoughts that you have and the depression that you have that can lead you to do all kinds of stuff that you might not expect. And trying to combat suicide and how to help people get through these problems is one of the biggest things that doctors try to do, is to help people learn to live, right? Alright, let's move on. So tests. It's not all sad, it's not all illness. Psychology has got tons of tests, all kinds of tests. They love testing everything that they can. There's 4 big different types of tests. The first, physical. This is for like motor skills. For example, if you have Parkinson's or if you have Huntington's, the way you move your arms and legs doesn't happen normally, right? So we have physical tests like this one. Everybody stick your arms out, 2 fingers, stick your arm out, and touch your nose quickly.
It's closed.
Did any, you don't have to close your eyes. Did anybody poke themselves in the eye? Good, you're fine. And then we have three different others: self-report, open form, and interpretive. Let's look at examples for all those. This is a self-report. This is actually 5 questions from a personality disorder test. Now, very common, you see these sentences and the numbers, right? 7 means I completely agree with this. 1 means I don't at all agree with this. So, does anybody see, or can anybody think of a problem that you might have with this kind of test? There's a couple. Well, one problem is, how do I decide 6 or 7? I mean, I think I agree, but I don't know. Maybe it's a 6, maybe it's a 5, right? Maybe sometimes a patient will lie because you don't want to seem strange.
That's a problem, yeah?
It's a giant problem. Another one. Look at this one. I often have strange dreams. Okay, sure, but what is strange? I have strange dreams all the time. They're normal. So there's all kinds of problems with this particular type of testing. But we still use it because, well, there's not a lot of other options, as we're about to find out. This is an open form test. It's open form because I'm asking you to do whatever your mind thinks of. Okay? This is from a creativity test to see how creative someone is. The job here is you've got this sheet of paper, just complete the drawings. They start a drawing, complete it. What can you think of, what kind of a problem would you see with this kind of test? Well, if you don't have creative people, then yeah. But
And what can we decide? What are the results of this test?
actually, yeah, that's the biggest thing. I mean, so if I draw a rabbit here, how is that different than if somebody draws
Like a fish.
an airplane or a fish or something, right? How do you judge? How do you grade
And
this
what's
test?
wrong?
And yeah, what's a good answer? What's a bad answer? It's another. There are rules. There are ways to grade these, but it's criticized very often because the question is, how do you know? How do you know if that's really creative or if?
But there may be statistics here and some connections between this type of that type of drawing and some diseases and things like that.
That's true. There's a lot of connections. The basic thing with this is that there's tons of research into samples of this particular test. And so what they do is, if, for example, on this one, you could probably imagine someone's going to draw some animal, right? I mean, that's exactly what I would do. Well, if you don't draw an animal, that's points for creativity, because you're doing something different than most people. That's the biggest way to grade these kinds of tests, is how different are your answers from most answers. Okay? And then, the most interesting, the interpretive test. Has anybody ever seen a Rorschach before? Yeah? Let's look at a few, huh? What do you see in this one? A bat. Any other ideas? Two ladies.
A beat.
Okay.
Pelvis.
Huh?
Pelvis.
A pelvis? That's exactly what I see. Does anybody see a demon? Yeah.
I see 2 griffins.
Yeah, 2 griffins. Griffins don't have to be demons. How about this one? What do you see here, guys? Sometimes you have to turn your head.
See face like 2 orange eyes, nose, and
Definitely, I see that too. So, eyes, nose,
yeah.
The proper way to do a Rorschach is that the experimenter, the doctor, gives you the piece of paper, and you can turn it around, you can hold it upside down, do whatever you want with it. Here, we can't really do that. But you get the idea, right? How about that one? A rat.
A skin.
A skin, okay.
I know, I see the pirate ship.
Yeah, yeah, like sideways?
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the water, and this is the ship, and the reflection. Yeah.
Like clothes.
Like what?
Like clothes.
Yeah. How about this one? What do you see?
Witches.
To ladies
Witches.
laundering.
We can talk later about what that means. Again, a problem with this kind of test is what is correct? What should you see? Well, how do you know if something is, oh, you really shouldn't be seeing that picture? You know? You should know. Rorschach tests are not used nearly as often now. They were very, very popular about 20 years ago, about 25 years ago. Some people still use them. But, like all these problems with the tests that we're talking about, you can only use it so much, right? You can only learn so much about a person from this kind of test. But it's kind of fun to look at them, right? So, what do we do? How do we treat these things? What's these warning signs? Feeling down, not so happy, right? Abnormal sleep, either sleeping too much, not sleeping enough. Trouble concentrating, huh?
Like Dennis.
Like Dennis, exactly like Dennis. Yeah, trouble concentrating. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of have this pretty often. Sometimes I sleep bad, sometimes I don't feel happy, sometimes I have trouble concentrating. So, if you remember what I said at the very beginning, how do we know if these are serious? Do you remember? How do we know if these are serious enough?
If you recognize it, you see it.
Right.
Interferes with your.
Right.
It's constant.
If it's constant and if it interferes with your life, right? If it hurts the way that you live, if it, hurts your job, if it hurts your family, that kind of thing. So what do? Well, there's of course the option of doing nothing. Well, you laugh, but there's a lot of people that do that. Why? Why would someone do nothing? A couple reasons. They don't recognize that it's a problem. Yeah? Laziness. Well,
They're
yeah.
scared that others can know about it.
That's a big problem, yeah. We call this the stigma of mental illness. When you're afraid that going to a doctor for some kind of problem like this makes other people look at you differently, right? Nobody wants to be thought of as that guy with schizophrenia, right? Nobody wants to be that guy that's bipolar. Right? And that's a big problem. The stigma's a big problem. Another reason is it's expensive. It's really expensive to get the kind of medications you need, to get the kind of treatment you need, to talk to a doctor, maybe even to visit a hospital for a few days. I want to talk more about that in a minute. But the other option is outpatient. This is when you visit a hospital and leave on the same day. You're just going to see the doctor and then you leave, right? You're not staying there. Community care, it's like a neighborhood, right? It's like a whole group of people that all have similar problems. And they live together, not in the same house, but in the same area, the same neighborhood, and they help each other with their problems, right? And there are mental health professionals, doctors, nurses, that can come and visit, check on them, see if they have any questions, see if they need any help, right? And they check on them pretty regularly, every other day, kind of. And then, of course, we have inpatient care. Has anybody seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yeah.
Yeah, great movie, great book. That is inpatient care, when you're at the hospital. But things aren't as scary as they make it sound. We'll talk more about that in a second. But those are the different options we have. But about how expensive things are. And this is one of the... I hate this about America. I really, really do. This is 1986. We spent $32 billion on mental health. 2005, $113 billion. So we're spending a lot more money on it, okay. But what are we spending the money on? Look at this. Almost half of the money was spent on keeping someone in a hospital. Not against their will, but keeping them there because that's where they need to be. When your illness is really, really serious, the best thing sometimes is to be in a hospital. Now, your illness changes, right? Someone with schizophrenia isn't always just thinking crazy thoughts and getting radio signals to their brain. They're like that for a week or two. And then they're more or less normal, right? So you don't need to be in the hospital all the time, but inpatient care is really, really important. But now what are we doing? This inpatient care has dropped. It's under 20% now. We don't want to keep people in the hospital. We can't keep people in the hospital. 90 days, that's it. No more. It's a law. And we're starting to spend a lot more money on drugs. So, and it makes me sick. This is one of the biggest problems, is you've got these psychiatrists who get a patient, take them into their office, 15 minutes, talk to them, write a prescription for some medicine, here you go, see you later. That doesn't really help. Sure, the medicine is useful, but you need therapy. You need to talk to a doctor. You need to go through this kind of counseling. It's not just medicine, 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 right? This is a big problem that we have right now. So this wonderful place, Whitfield, Mississippi. A couple of years ago, I had the excellent opportunity to work at this hospital. We have a family friend who is a psychiatrist at this hospital. It's the State Mental Hospital. And I spent a whole summer working with her. I would go in, she would give me a list of patients to check on for the day. I'd go talk to them, you know, see if they needed help, see if they needed anything. I went all over the campus. I learned so many things. It was a really, really interesting experience. Very eye-opening. Lots of stories. I'll get to a couple in a second. But based on that, let's talk a little bit about inpatient treatment. Now, of course, there's a difference between a private hospital and a government hospital, right? This is a government hospital. It's a state hospital. But based on what my experience is, I can tell you a little bit about it. So, when you got a problem, you go in. You're admitted to the hospital and you take the MMSE, the MEMSE, the Mini Mental State Examination. It's a very, very short examination, maybe 10, 15 questions, to see how bad your problem is, how much you're able to talk to people, converse with people, understand the world around you. So I'm sure you're interested. Let's do this right now. I have a couple of the questions. No,
Where?
it's on the kitchen table.
Okay.
Would you grab it? Julia Petrovna, never mind. I have it. It was under the computer. Oops. It was hiding. Okay. Start out simple. Start out very, very simple. What year is it? What year is it?
2015.
2014. Okay, good answer. Good answer. What month is it?
It's April.
So far, so good. What day of the week is it? Okay. Saturday. What is the number day? The date?
The 26th.
Yes. And what is the time?
About 1 o'clock.
Half past 1.
It's in the afternoon. Okay, so that is orientation in time. Now let's talk about place. What country are we in?
Russia.
Okay, good answer. What region are we in? Okay. What city are we in? Okay. So far so good. What building are we in? All right. You guys are on top. Okay, I need a volunteer. Will you please remember 3 things for me? Yeah? I'm gonna give you a list of 3 things. Just remember them, okay? Ready? Alright. Apple, table, penny. Say those for me?
Apple, table, penny.
Okay, remember those. Okay, I need another volunteer. Maxime!
Okay.
Start at 100 and count backwards by 7.
By 7.
7,
By
6,
7.
5,
From 100. So 100.
100.
93.
93.
93,
Minus 7.
right now.
Right now, please.
93,
Uh-huh.
93, 92, 91.
No.
By
Shadow
7.
same.
It's a tough question.
93, 86,
Yes?
79, 72, ой, 62.
Good enough.
72,
72.
65.
65. There we go. Okay. Will you spell world backwards?
G-L-R-O-W.
Fine. 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 What are those three things?
Apple, table, penny.
Excellent. What is this?
Coffee.
It's coffee. What is this?
Mobile
Remote
phone.
control.
It's a cell phone.
Ah, cell phone.
Yeah. Naming simple everyday objects, right? Sometimes it's a pencil, sometimes it's a piece of paper, doesn't matter. Any everyday object. And the last one. All right, Tanya, do this for me. I need you to take the finger of your right hand and put it on your nose, and then your ear.
Any finger.
Any finger. Okay. Being able to follow commands. Follow commands, right? 3-stage commands. There's a couple of others, but we need pencil and paper. You get the idea. Very simple, short test, and it gets scored. And your score stays with you the whole time you're at the hospital. So that's it. Life in the ward, the food is bad. I'm just going to say that now. The food is awful. It's like a cafeteria, but worse. What are you going to do, right? But living there is not so bad, especially here. This is like a college campus. Lots of buildings, lots of nature, you can walk around, and you can almost forget that there's a big metal fence around the outside. Right? You can almost forget that. But not everybody gets to walk around. You have to prove to the doctors and the nurses and the orderlies, the staff there, that you're not going to hurt yourself or other people. You have to earn this. Not everybody just goes walking around. You have to prove to your doctor that you deserve it. That's fair, because you don't want somebody walking around that's... right? Usually, they put you with a roommate. At least one, sometimes two. So these rooms, you've got 3 patients, maybe 2 patients living together. And it's kind of like a community. They want it to look like a college. They want it to look like a university. It makes people feel more normal, you know? It doesn't make people feel like they're at a mental hospital if, you know, you've got a roommate and you can walk around, right?
Have you watched House?
Of course.
The 6th season starts with
Yes.
like that.
Yes, yes it does. House is excellent. So what do you do? What do you do when you're at the hospital? Of course you've got medicine, right? That's just one thing. That's the not interesting thing. Group therapy. 3 or 4 times a week, they get the patients, they sit them all in a circle, and they just go around, say, what's nice today?
Someone from the Cooper's Nest the same, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. You know, and it might be, what problems are you struggling with right now? How are you feeling today? And they all try to help each other out. You know, they give each other advice. They talk to each other about their problems. Surprise, surprise, that's a good idea for everyone. Everyone should talk about their problems with friends, right? Makes you feel better. Private counseling, you can either go with a nurse practitioner, which is almost a doctor. She can give you medicine. Or talk to a doctor as well, privately. Just one-on-one, classic. He tries to give you strategies for dealing with your problems. CBT and ECT. Lots of letters, lots of letters. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. This is when we, like, classic example, if you get angry or upset really easily, a doctor would say, breathe, count to 10. 1, 2, 3. That's the kind of idea for cognitive behavioral therapy, giving you physical strategies for dealing with your problems. ECT. This is electroshock therapy. Electroconvulsive therapy is what it's called now. This is exactly what you expect. They put the little paddles right here on your temples. You're not awake for it.
Some stick into your mouth.
Yes, yes, so that you don't bite your tongue. And you're not awake for it. They give you some medicine, you're asleep, so it's not scary or anything. And then they shock you for 15 seconds. That's it. And then they take you out, and you wake up. No, I see that face, and it sounds scary, it looks scary. I watched it happen. but it's amazing how much it helps these people. It's really amazing. You can see someone who is extremely depressed, so depressed that they just want to give up on life. After 2 weeks of ECT, they're already happy, singing, planting things in the garden. Complete turnaround. Dancing. There are a couple of downsides. Usually people's memory is a little bit worse afterwards. Usually. But that's really the only big downside, is a little bit of memory, and that comes back after practice and time, right? It's not gone forever. It's an amazing thing. The length of stay, I talked about a few minutes ago. 90 days is the most you can keep somebody in the hospital, unless they are going to hurt themselves or another person. You're not allowed to send them out into the world if they're dangerous, but if everything's normal, you gotta send them out. And there's a lot of problems with this, because you can imagine, I don't want to knock that over. You can imagine that it might be hard to make sure that a patient continues to take medicine. It might be hard to make sure that a patient continues to behave properly, to deal with their problems as they should. And most of the time they don't. Without a doctor being there to kind of hold their hand and help them, very often this doesn't happen. And it leads to what we call a revolving door. They come in, they get treatment, 90 days, bye. A few months later, they're back again. And it just repeats and repeats. I wish there was a good solution, but unfortunately, right now there's not. We're working on trying to find a way to do this, but for now, we don't have any solutions for that. Couple stories. I had some great patients. I had one lady who was very, 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 very bipolar. And she would talk your head off. She would talk to you for hours and hours and hours if you let her. And very often I'd walk in and she'd say, "Oh, Zach, you're here. Come sit down by the piano." And we would sit down at the piano and she would make up songs. It would start out being a song that everybody knows, and after about 15 seconds you realize that she's creating something very new. New words, new music, singing about whatever's in front of her. There's a lady there that has schizophrenia and Parkinson's, and this is unfortunate, very unfortunate. The medicine that we use for schizophrenia makes Parkinson's worse. And the medicine that we use for Parkinson's makes hallucinations worse. So what do? You have to choose which is more serious, which is going to hurt this person's health more. Usually that's Parkinson's. And so you continue to give them that kind of medication. Unfortunately, their hallucinations, their delusions get much bigger, unbelievably bigger. I was interviewing this lady, and about 5 minutes into the interview, we're sitting in front of each other, and she looks over here. Nothing there. It's empty. And she starts yelling, "Pick up your toys!" I'm sorry, ma'am, what's going on? "I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to her, and she needs to go pick up her toys." "Ma'am, there's no one there." "Yes, there is, don't you tell me what I know." And what are you going to do? I mean, on the one hand, if you've never seen it before, you might want to laugh. But this is very real for her. This is, sure, there's nothing there, but she thinks there is, and it's bothering her. So you have to treat it as if it were real. You have to. Otherwise, you lose the respect of the patient, and then you can't help them at all. Lots of other stories. If you're interested, we can talk about it after, but let's move on for now. So what are we going to do to fix things in the future? Right now, we've been studying the brain and neurons and all kinds of stuff. And the idea is that hopefully if we can understand the way the brain works, the biology of the brain, your neurons and how the chemicals all work together, we can make better medicine that's effective, right? A medicine that actually helps people, that actually works. We're not there yet. The brain is like all the computers on the world put together, but more complicated than that, right? Your brain is an amazing computer. It's an amazing organ. You should all take 5 minutes when you leave today and think about how amazing your brain is. It's awesome. Also, DNA, we have to understand how these diseases work hereditarily, right? We have to understand how, you know, one person has schizophrenia and their son has schizophrenia, and if we can understand that, maybe we can work to eliminate schizophrenia altogether, for example. But, you know, we don't have answers yet. We're still trying to start studying this. I mean, psychology is, I believe, the youngest science. And thanks to Freud, as you guys call him, only 100, 150 years ago or so, did it even become something we study, something we should care about. And so it's young. It's a young science. And we just need more people to care about it. We need more people to say that we have to fix these problems. Because they're problems that we all live with. I mean, we saw at the beginning, 1 in 4 people has some kind of mental illness. You're guaranteed to know several people in your life. That's a big problem if everybody's got something like this. We gotta try to fix it. That's our job, right? So, if anyone is with me, let's all try to help each other out, right? Let's try to make this problem a little bit better. If you have any questions, this is it. The doctor is in. Any questions?
Everybody's analyzing their
Picture.
Very serious topic. But it's really cool.
I've got a question.
Okay.
So, it's a very huge problem in Russia if you're stalked. So, I mean, if someone is constantly pursuing you,
Mm-hmm.
complaining of the voices or something like that, and you apply to the police for help, they usually refuse to help you. They say, you are not hurt, he or she didn't break the law, so they have to wait until I'm hurt or killed.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the same in America?
So this isn't exactly a mental illness question, right? Not exactly. Yeah, it's more or less the same.
What to do
If you have some
in such a situation?
If you have some proof that you're in danger, the police will help you. But if you don't, you kind of have to. You're assumed to protect yourself.
So no protection.
Not exactly. Any questions? Anybody?
Can you recommend some films about the mental health problems? Because I know like something like We've Said and the Sixth Sense.
The Sixth Sense. Yeah.
It's a really strange film.
As far as films, the best, most classic example is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It seems everybody's seen that. A Clockwork Orange deals with a different kind of mental illness and treatment.
Ultraviolence.
Yes, very violent film actually. Kind of a tough film to watch for some people. More than that, there's tons of books, which, granted, are in English. Everybody knows Kurt Vonnegut, right?
Yeah.
His son, Mark, has schizophrenia, and he's got a great biography about how he found out that he has this disease and how he is trying to deal with this disease. Very interesting guy. He's not as good of a writer as his father, but interesting to read.
Is medication the doctor's monopoly? I mean, they only decide what to prescribe and what patients should, or parents can buy some things, some drugs for kids. Or teachers at school may decide the kid needs something.
Oh, no. Doctors are the only people that can make that decision. They decide what and how much. No one else can make that decision. A very big surprise to me, no mental illness medication can you just go to the store and buy. You have to have a prescription.
Here is the same.
Antidepressants even?
Yeah, mental. They have even special drugstore,
Mm-hmm.
and they sell these kind of medications only on a special prescription
Yeah,
from a mental health doctor.
yeah. You've got to have.
Do you need to undergo therapy if you want to be a psychologist?
Do I have to undergo therapy if I want to be a psychiatrist?
Yes, because people do it in Russia.
Really?
All psychologists, they need personal therapy before they start their own practice.
Interesting. No, it's the other way around, actually. You have to take part in helping other people with therapy. but you don't have to go through therapy yourself. Which, you would think that might be a good idea.
Exactly.
Hey, what's up?
As a psychiatrist, can you define whether you have mental problems or not?
If, like, I myself have a problem or not.
For example.
Me personally, or a psychiatrist?
Are you a psychiatrist?
No. I have to go to medical
Let's say
school first.
if a psychiatrist here,
Mhm.
and can he define himself having a mental problems or not?
He could, but usually it's not a good idea for a psychiatrist.
Can he further be a psychiatrist, or can he be a patient?
You can still be a patient, definitely. But it's very, very, well, first of all, a psychiatrist can't give himself medication for a problem. He has to go see another psychiatrist and let a different person say, this is what you've got, you need this kind of medication. Even if he knows the problem himself.
Like every house.
Yeah,
Every problems.
exactly. Other questions? No?
Some other stories?
Plenty.
So there's a place at the hospital with a big barbed wire fence around it, and this is where they keep prisoners. Because if you commit a crime and you claim that you are insane, you can't go to jail like a normal person, but they can't just say, okay, yeah, you're insane, that's fine. You have to go to the hospital and let the doctor say if you're insane or if you're not. We call that being fit to stand trial, right? So they keep these patients, prisoners, in there, and every week they have to evaluate them. They have to say, is this person able to go to court, or do they need to stay here? Do they need treatment? I got to sit in on a few of these interviews, and this one guy, he comes in and he's telling us that the devil told him to kill this woman, and he's telling us about how Satan has been inside of his soul for all this time, and he's getting messages from all kinds of things around him. Maybe the chairs are in a particular pattern, or maybe the birds are making this sound or something. And I'm sitting there going, this is scary. This is really, like, this guy's being told by Satan to kill people. But after he left, the doctor looks at me and says, well, that was interesting, wasn't it? I was like, yeah. How do you deal with someone like this? And he goes, oh, he's lying. He's absolutely lying. And I was like, how do you know? And he starts giving me some examples of his speech. For example, when someone's lying, they stop. They say something crazy, and then they wait. They want to see what you think, right? But if you're actually crazy, you don't care. You're just going to keep talking. No problem. That's just one example, but they have a lot of different ways of telling if they are malingering. That's what it's called when you're lying about a mental illness. Very interesting, because I believe the guy. I completely believe the guy. So, that's another story.
Right. And in that particular situation you mentioned, when this lady, she saw somebody or you say, you can't say, well, there's nobody, you have to...
You can tell her, no ma'am, there's no one there. And, sometimes it depends on how bad it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're really suffering from the illness at that time, you're not going to listen. Yes, there is something there,
Okay.
but some people you can kind of reason with. You can say, there's nothing there, I promise, and they'll calm down, they'll quiet down a little bit. But throughout the conversation with that lady, she kept forgetting who I was. She thought that I was part of the government and trying to take her taxes. Then she thought that I was coming to give her shock therapy. And I had to keep reminding her, no ma'am, I'm just here to talk to you. We're just here to talk, that's it.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Zach?
Okay, thanks guys.
Thanks a lot.